I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask.
He's a fool, an absolute fool to talk that way.
Candidates, congresspeople, elites in Washington are without any doubt more extreme and more polarized than the American public themselves. And this is a trend that we have seen going on for several years. In fact, most Republicans and most Democrats are really quite ideologically moderate. So, when an issue isn't particularly important to somebody, that's when we see the biggest level of polarization among voters. So if something's not that important to you, it makes sense to say, well, what are the people that who share my party affiliation doing on this? I'll support them. When issues become a lot more personal to people, something like, say, coronavirus, something that actually scares you, something that's in your community, that's when we see people actually start even-handedly evaluating information. So I did a really interesting study with some co-authors across the country at different universities. And what we find is that when coronavirus cases are really low, that's when there's a lot of polarization between what Democrats and Republicans think about the virus. But what's interesting is that as coronavirus increases in someone's county, then we see partisans really coming together. And I think that's why we do see, for example, here in Arizona, a large majority of people who wear masks and who want mask mandates, despite the fact that they're not uniformly getting that message, particularly from Republican elites. So there is more polarization in Washington. Once issues become important, that's where we see Democrats and Republicans starting to come to some agreement. I really like to talk to strangers about politics. A lot of people don't. So when I'm on an airplane, for example, if somebody asks what I do, I happily tell them I'm a political scientist because it will inevitably lead them into some sort of rant about their views on politics. And I love hearing it. I love hearing what people have to think about politics because those are people that I'm not going to be exposed to otherwise. And those are important sources of cross-cutting information. It's important to be exposed to information with which you disagree. Well, I think what's really important to remember is that everybody identifies with all sorts of different groups. And the fact is, when we ask Americans, which are the identity groups that are most important to you, consistently partisanship is ranked dead last. Most of the time, people truly don't care to think about their partisanship. They don't want to think about politics. They want to think about all the other things that are important to them. So I think we need to be really specific here. When we think about tension between Democrats and Republicans, are we talking about the way Americans think about Democrats and Republicans in Washington, or are we talking about the way people feel about each other? And we see much less antagonism and much less hostility when it comes to evaluating actually members of our community. Republicans are wearing masks, Democrats are wearing masks. Republicans are worried about their health, they're worried about their jobs, they're worried about their kids. Democrats are worried about the exact same things. And so you see a lot of unity in the concerns that people are expressing. That's what I think is really important when you're to think about or to remind yourself of when you're speaking to someone from the other party. It doesn't take long to find something where you can really connect.